We are doing chapter 12, and I'm with Asanda as my navigator. In chapter 12, we're going to be showing validation errors. And then on our store user.js, we have the user require, which then we have the poll. We created the path for the user, and then we have we have user to create request body, and then if we get an error, it must redirect us to the same page so we can log in our information again. And then we went to our let me see, because this is an explanation of the same code part. And then we went to validation errors and template. We went to our um, which file is this? Let's see. We are on our index here. On our index, we created module exports require, and then the user, if after entering the information, it must validate. If it has an error, it must show us that there's an error, and then the session will be redirected so we can register again. And then we created a file called register.ejs where we have module.exports require, and then a recent register, and then the errors, it must just show that there's error validation error. And then we went to our register EJS again. We have our head, which is the main contact, where we'll have if statement on the errors. If errors is not equals to if errors is not equals to null, and errors so if we get an error, in simple, if we get an error after putting all these things, it must redirect us to the user page so we can enter. Actually, if we get an error, it must show us that we are required to put the password in the username. It must redirect us. If you remember on previous chapter, it will just redirect us without saying anything. Now it will tell us that we need to put certain things, need to put username and password. And then if this one, if we put a duplicate of a password or username, it will show us an error. So we're not supposed to use the same username or the same password twice. This is what this whole function is all about. And here they're just describing that it's gonna be the string. It must be unique. That's why it say true, and then it is required to be like that. And then also the password, it must be the string, and then a required true, it must be like that. So we cannot use the same password or username twice. It's gonna be a duplicate, and there it will show us that username has to be unique. And then we have flashing errors. So if there's an error on the username and the password that we put, it will have to show us that the password it will have to show us that the password is wrong, or you need to put the password again. And then customizing error messages. So these are the messages that we are going to get after if either we put the wrong password or we put the duplicate password and username will be redirected to this flash message. And then that's what is happening on the user.js, where we have required true, please provide your username, and then please provide your password. And then we uh and then we are requesting data that is on the form. So this one we will have to um, it's fetching the data that we have on our index, but we're doing it is stored on our store user, where we'll say const user require module exports, and then a validation error, and then the flash that we already done, and then we go to which one is this? Our register EJS, where we modify the username and the password. So they are activated by this percentage and this greater and less than sign. closing. And yeah, that's all. So we're just gonna have to taste it. Gonna have to test, not taste, test it. So for example, if I can just put a wrong information and say maybe Asanda, so we must get those messages. It's gonna give me an error. Let me run. Let me refresh my first. Let me run my terminal again. npm start. Okay, npm start. Okay, localhost 4000. So if I were to log in, for example, and say maybe Asanda, and then just wrong password. Let's see if we're gonna have a message. Mm. Why is it doing like this? It's supposed to flash the message. Okay, one last time. 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 npm start. npm start. Localhost 4000. New user. Let's see. I think now it should be fine. There we go. So it is working. It will tell us that we need to put the password and the username, and it has to be unique. So now this is showing, because I already have a username by the name of Kudo, so now it's showing us that it's a duplicate, it won't work. And yeah, everything is working now on our code and our application. And thank you very much, Asanda.